Okay, good evening. I will call this meeting to order at 6:03. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jessica Black. I show absent at the moment. Commissioner Anthony Colindres stated that he would be absent this evening. Commissioner Paul St. Martin.
Here.
Vice Chair Nathan Smith.
Here.
Chairman Patrick Stevens.
Here. To Pledge of Allegiance, Nicole, could you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
I have none.
None? All right. Conflicts of interest disclosure? Anybody? None? So this is a time for public comments. The meeting will be open to the public and conducted in a virtual format to be inclusive of all participation preferences. Public comment participation is encouraged by emailing any comments to the city clerk's office or by calling in using the phone number provided on the front of the agenda. Are there any requests to speak at the moment?
I do not have any written comments, and I believe the caller that we have on the line is for an item on the agenda, but I will double check. Heather, do we have anyone else on the line?
No one for public comment.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move forward with the action items. Approval of the minutes. Is there any request to speak on this matter?
I have no written comments. Heather, do we have anyone on the line for this item?
We do not.
All right, this is for the minutes for May 11th, 2021.
I'll move to approve. Second.
Move in a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner St. Martin?
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Stevens?
Yes. That is approved.
Sorry to interrupt, just for a moment, Commissioner Black just contacted me and said she is stuck and she will not be able to make the meeting this evening.
Thank you for the update. All right, we can move on to number 2, the housing element update presentation and workshop. And can we have a staff report, please, and presentation?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. Nice to see you all here
Yes,
in
You too.
person. It's been a while, so I'm super excited to have this item for you guys tonight. And it is an update on, or a presentation on the housing element update. So as you're aware, we updated the general plan, took effect the beginning of this year. Housing elements are a mandatory part of the general plan, but the housing element runs on a slightly different cycle. So we went through all the RHNA process, if you remember back, 2018, 2019. And so now we are in the process of putting those numbers into work with the housing element. This housing element is required by the state of California. Its purpose is to ensure that cities adequately plan for their allocation, the amount of housing that the state has said each jurisdiction, based on the formula, is required to provide over the housing cycle. So anyway, we put the housing element out for public review on July 9th. We had a presentation at the City Council at this last meeting on August 3rd. And tonight, the intent is to give the presentation as well to you and also hold somewhat of a community workshop and question and answer opportunity for both the commission and anyone in the public who was unable to attend or participate at the City Council meeting. So we have Lisa Wise Consulting with us this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to her to give the presentation and take any questions, answers, or feedback that you guys may have. And staff's recommended action is basically just to receive the presentation and then allow for any type of discussion the commission would like to have or that the public would like to have.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina. I'm Jen Murillo with LWC, and we're happy to be here tonight to talk about your housing element update. I'll have a relatively brief presentation talking about housing elements generally, about the process and public outreach we've gone through, a few quick data points on housing needs and conditions, talk about the content of the draft housing element, go into some next steps before we get into the discussion. So, as Christina mentioned, housing elements are a required, are a required section of your general plan. The housing element is different from other elements in that it must be updated every 8 years and it must be approved by the state. So, the state requires certain elements to be included. That being looking at housing needs and conditions, looking at goals, policies, and programs, as well as identifying how the city can accommodate housing at all income levels over the course of the 8-year period. Now, it's important to note that cities are not required to build or initiate housing projects. Rather, cities must ensure that zoning capacity exists to build the housing that has been allocated. So the state identifies some specific components that you'll see in the draft housing element. That includes a review of your current housing element and the programs within that, what's been effective and what should be continued and what has not been and should be modified. An assessment of housing needs, so looking at demographic, employment, and housing trends and conditions. And then identifying the site's inventory. So as Christina mentioned, looking at parcels of land that are suitably zoned to accommodate the RHNA, or the Regional Housing Need Allocation. Also identifying resources that can support housing, development, preservation, and rehab, and looking at constraints. So barriers to housing. That can be governmental, like zoning and permit procedures, and can be non-governmental, like market or environmental factors. And then lastly, a critical piece is your implementation plan. That is your housing plan with goals, policies, and programs over the next 8 years. Now, the state continues to pass new housing legislation, and the draft housing element addresses new legislation and ongoing amendments to legislation as quickly as we can keep up. But those include more stringent requirements for identifying housing sites, looking at expanded analysis associated with fair housing and segregation issues, and then additional penalties for noncompliance, so being out of compliance with a state certified housing element. In terms of the process, we are partway through the public review as well as review with the state. So while this project kicked off at the end of last year, we submitted the draft housing element to the state in July, and we have a public review period that ends in September. So running from July 9th to September 9th. And our goal is to end at the end of the year with an adopted housing element update. So between now and then, we are looking to get comments from the community, you, from the state, and make revisions and come back to Planning Commission in November at a hearing to make recommendations to council and go to council for adoption hearing in December. In the meantime, the city has posted a webpage dedicated to the housing element on its website. We also held a community meeting on March 18th, so early on in the process to get initial feedback. Also, the city has provided email notifications, news releases, and social media to keep the public involved and get the word out. And we also held that council study session to review the same material we're talking about today. Briefly, to highlight a few housing conditions in the city. While Beaumont has an household income distribution that is very similar to the county, Beaumont has a higher median household income. Nevertheless, about a third of Beaumont households are lower income, meaning they earn less than 80% of the area median income, or AMI, which is really just the median income for Riverside County. Being housing cost burdened or overpaying for housing means that a household is spending more than 30% of its income on housing costs. And in Beaumont, Beaumont residents experience a lower rate of housing overpayment compared to the region. But more than 4 out of 10 renters in Beaumont are housing cost burdened. Now, of course, as would be expected, lower income households are more likely to be housing cost burdened compared to households that earn higher income levels. Now, Beaumont permits more units on a per capita basis compared to the region, but these permits have largely been for single family homes. Now, that does meet a need. However, multifamily units are options to provide different housing categories as well as affordability levels that can serve certain household needs. The Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, is the target number of units that the city must plan for during this housing element cycle. And that is distributed among the specific income categories. And each jurisdiction must show that it can accommodate its total RHNA number by income level. And Beaumont's RHNA for this cycle has been allocated 4,210 units. Just under 40% of those, 1,530 or 1,537, so about 40%, just under, have been allocated for above moderate or market rate units. The remainder, just above 60%, is in the moderate income category and below. So these are the numbers we're looking at accommodating through the city's current zoning. So the draft housing element has been released. The focus of the housing element is that housing plan. That housing plan that includes these 6 goals we have noted over here, as well as policies and programs. And I'll hit on some of the key programs in a moment. But the housing element also includes a handful of appendices which documents the technical analysis and supporting information the state requires to have a certified housing element and to inform the goals, policies, and programs. First, the site's inventory. This component of the draft housing element identifies 3 methods by which the city will address or accommodate the RHNA. They are accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, entitled and proposed projects, and the site inventory. Accessory dwelling units are projected based on the relatively recent permitting history that the city has had with ADUs. The entitled and proposed projects largely represent specific plan areas that are remaining to be built out. So you see a substantial number of units in the above moderate or market rate category. Those are largely specific plan areas remaining to be built out. Then lastly, the site inventory identifies parcels within the city that are vacant and are zoned for residential and can accommodate housing units. So here, the income categories identified are based on the allowed maximum density that those zones standards provide for. And that is based on the state methodology, which uses density as a proxy for income categories. And here is a map of the sites. This is an Appendix B of the housing element. And again, these identify parcels that are vacant and have residential zoning to accommodate higher levels or higher densities of housing. So these sites on the map are under no obligation to construct affordable housing. We're just showing that the capacity is available. And the brown or tan sites are identified for moderate income. Those are primarily with the urban village and the eastern area of downtown. Then the lower income sites in the blue are primarily in the new transit-oriented district overlay established through general plan and zoning. And those are more or less southeast of the junction of 79 and 10. So a few key programs, the first being the rezone program, and this is to address that slight shortfall in lower income. I did not mention that the outcome of the RHNA and the sites inventory is that you have a substantial surplus actually in your above moderate and moderate income housing categories. However, you have a very slight, a 49 unit shortfall in your lower income category. So that must be addressed through a program. And so the program here is to allow for some of those moderate income sites to be able to be shifted over to lower income through an increase in the allowed density in some of those moderate income sites. And we're anticipating those moderate income sites that are rezoned to be in the downtown area. Another program is a minimum densities program. This is a program to establish minimum densities on housing sites where minimum densities do not currently exist. Now, the city has minimum densities established in many of the zones that allow for residential, but there are a few in those downtown zones where minimum densities aren't established, and this would help to ensure that sites are developed at the capacities we're considering for the housing element. A program for accessory dwelling units is included, and that is to update the zoning code to be consistent with current state law and prepare ADU standard plans to help facilitate the permitting and production of ADUs. Now, LWC, our contract with the city, does include us updating the ADU ordinance and preparing standard plans, so we will be conducting that effort. Also in our contract is updating the zoning code density bonus provisions to also be consistent with state law. These are provisions that have been updated since the last housing element, and so we would be conducting that as well. Related is an enhanced density bonus program, and this would be the city evaluating increasing density bonus provisions beyond that allowed by state law with the intent of determining whether that could incentivize additional affordable housing to be constructed. A program for mixed-use parking incentives is included to analyze if in appropriate locations, specifically mixed-use areas, reductions in required parking could be allowed. And that references the current parking management master plan work. So conducting that analysis and including those provisions, updated provisions as appropriate in the zoning code. And lastly, objective design standards. Here, adopting objective standards, so making sure we don't have subjective or discretionary review standards for residential and mixed use projects. And this is something LWC also has in our contract with the city to be providing. So we're starting to work on that. So as we mentioned, the public review period will continue through September 9th. There are a variety of ways to provide input. You can reach out to Christina at the city. Also, the city's housing element webpage has a survey via which you can submit comments that way as well. Of course, speaking up today and future public hearings, although we would very much appreciate to get comments now so we can fold them into the housing element that will go before hearings later in the year. And then HCD directly is another alternative for commenting. So with that, we are working on a few final things. Just preparing the affirmatively furthering fair housing analysis per state law. Now, guidance for this was released as we were already underway on the housing element, so we will be getting that wrapped up shortly. And then our next steps are incorporating any comments received and getting ready to bring the housing element to hearings and addressing state HCD comments to make sure that we have a housing element ready and consistent for certification by the state, with our intent of wrapping up with a final housing element by the end of this year. So please stay informed and involved. I'm sure the Planning Commission will. The Housing Element Update webpage is a great place for information, of course, as well as contacting Christina. So, of course, we're very interested in your comments, your questions. We wanted to open it up for discussion, and just thank you very, very much for your time.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Now, we have a email here. Does that count for a request to speak, or?
That may be the caller. That may be the caller that's on the line. I'm not sure, but it was an email that we received after the presentation at the city council meeting. And so staff has spoken with the applicant, but we wanted to make sure it was included for the record, both for the commission's knowledge as well as for public comment purposes as we move through the rest of the housing element update process.
So with that, is there any request to speak? Any callers on the line?
I have no written comments. I'm sorry. I have no written comments, but I believe we have a caller on the line. Is that correct, Heather?
Yes, we do have a caller on the line. Her name is Catherine, and I can put her through if you're ready.
Okay, go ahead. Caller, can you hear us?
Sure can. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You're on the line.
Great. Hi there. My name's Catherine Brzezowski. My father owned several pieces of property in Beaumont, and so, since he has passed, I'm now a Beaumont property owner. I've read through your plan, and it's well written and relatively easy to follow as a non-expert. I also did watch your city council meeting from 3 weeks ago when this was presented and appreciate following the process. There's a few things that I'd like to ask for a little bit more detail about and hear you articulate a little bit more of your strategy. I'm curious to hear detail on how you're looking to accomplish program number 1, the RHNA Housing Site Implementation Rezone Program. Could you please share more detail about how this is being done, specifically how you're identifying properties for inclusion and a rezone? It would be helpful to hear what makes one location more preferential over another. What specifically is Beaumont looking for? Are you looking for vacant land specifically? Are you looking for property along bus lines? What is important to Beaumont? Secondly, I understand that the state is encouraging you to have a buffer of surplus inventory of low-income housing to meet the RHNA targets to ensure adequate site capacity exists. I've heard a figure of a 20% buffer is ideal in case units fall through. What percentage of a buffer is Beaumont aiming to have? Logically, the inclusion of the 20% surplus seems to make sense. Hearing Jen describe that not all units might be developed as you have identified them. Finally, when would you be identifying properties that are eligible for a rezone to be included as part of the housing element inventory? Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak, and thanks for all that you're doing on this work.
Heather, do we have any other callers?
No, we do not.
So is staff able to give a timeline on maybe some of those requests?
So I'm going to defer to Jen a little bit, just because the rezone program is obviously in draft format at this point, which is what everybody's looking at. So I don't know if Jen, you want to expand a little bit on how the rezone program would work, or speak at all about the surplus inventory.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that question, those comments. In the appendix for the housing element, Appendix B, we have Table B8. That identifies on a parcel by parcel basis the sites in our site inventory. And it also identifies with an asterisk which sites we are preliminarily identifying for rezoning. And so we are looking to address a shortfall of 49 lower income units. And looking at the existing site inventory, we're looking at sites that already allow for a higher density of residential housing and are vacant. So these sites are included in the site inventory for moderate income and would just need to be rezoned from a maximum of 22 units to an acre to 30 units an acre. So in terms of the relative impact, it's a lower potential impact and does provide for parcels that are located in the downtown area that does have access to transportation corridors and also are considered in higher resource areas, which is something that is considered by the state in terms of looking at affirmatively furthering fair housing and trying to find higher opportunities and locations for lower income housing. In terms of the question or comment on a buffer, we haven't identified a specific target buffer for the city to establish. We work on that on a case-by-case basis based on the existing conditions in the city and the city's needs. So at this point, nothing's been established as a target, and we're starting to work on the environmental review, which may have some implications for how we make some of those decisions.
Great, thank you. Is there any commission discussion?
On the lower income, is that multifamily dwellings primarily or rentals?
Generally speaking, because of the densities, it does end up being multifamily. However, they could be rentals or they could be ownership. So what happens
As in condominiums or?
Sure, condos or anything like that. What happens when we look at a project that comes forth, in order to qualify for the RHNA allocation in either low or low mod or whatever category they want to be in, the properties are deed restricted. So at the time that it's either established as a rental project or as a for sale product, there's a requirement that it has to be deed restricted for a number of years. I think it's like 50 years, maybe more, at a certain income level. And so that ensures that whether it's a for sale or for rental, it goes to someone who is within that criteria for whatever level of income is required.
That's, I'm good.
I've got a couple of questions. You know, we have quite a large stock of 55 plus housing that may be on fixed income. Does that apply towards what would be lower income, if whether or not they come in with the ability to purchase a house and have a mortgage per se, but if the income level is lower for the senior community, does that factor into our total affordability of low income units?
Can I interrupt really quick, Chairman? I think your mic is off.
We'll try that again. So we have a lot of 55 plus units within the community, and many of those citizens are on fixed income. So if they're on a fixed income, whether or not they own the house or not, does that count as an affordable unit, or is it based on what the market price would be of the resale?
Yeah, so we have to look at the market price. So say the Altus community, right? Mm-hmm. The majority of those are above moderate based on the sale price. So the formula is established and we plug in the information on the house and it generates, you know, what the affordability level is. So now we have others potentially coming in from some projects that commission has approved in the past that may meet some of those lower levels. But right now, your typical Four Seasons or Altus or those type of senior communities are going to be above mod just based on the price point that there are. Now, if they were deed restricted in some capacity, then yes, those new units could count towards, but as of now, we don't really have any of those senior. Age restricted, yes, but they're not income
Right.
restricted, yeah.
Okay. Along Sixth Street, you know, we rezoned a lot of that to mixed use. And a lot of it's already got probably underutilized land throughout there. But I didn't see that as part of what the option was. Is that because it's already in use and we can't count that as potential housing? Or, you know, how does that work in towards our number? Because if we do follow through with the vision of the city, that's gonna be a lot of potential additional units along that corridor.
Right. So we, like I think Jen said this, we identified vacant parcels, right? Now, that doesn't mean that a parcel that has, say, a single-family house on it, right? That may not have been included in our list of, you know, sites for site inventory that we're looking at. But if someone wanted to come in and say, hey, I've got a Sixth Street mixed-use zoning, but I've got a single-family home, can I do X, Y, Z? You know, yeah, we could then look at that and say, oh, hey, these are new units. If they are deed restricted and they meet whatever the requirements are, if someone wanted to do a low income or low mod level housing, then yes, those then would be counted as additional units.
But we're not allowed to count it for the housing element, though.
Yes, we could still report it and count it.
Okay.
Just because it's not identified doesn't mean we can't count it if something like that comes in. What we have to do is show right now that we can accommodate our number that was given to us, the 4,200 plus number. If we end up over time being able to show that we've accommodated more or met more than what's required, then, you know, that obviously is a good thing. But we
So-
could still count it if it was built at
So
the
once-
appropriate level, we could still count it.
So once the specific plans are built out,
Yeah,
there's not necessarily a lot of vacant land left in the city.
no.
How would a city meet its RHNA requirements if they're looking at vacant land only and not
Mm-hmm.
underutilized land?
Christina, if I may, I'm
Sure,
happy to
go ahead, Jen.
jump in.
Yep.
You can absolutely count underutilized land towards your RHNA capacity. As you can imagine, there are some cities in LA County that
you go.
literally have no vacant
Right.
land. You do have vacant land,
Yeah.
and you just updated your general plan and zoning, which allows you to make substantial progress to your RHNA allocation. So really commending the city for what they've done there, because you are in a very good position relative to many other cities in the state. But yes, underutilized sites may be counted towards your RHNA. The scrutiny level is just much higher with HCD. So we can go through that analysis if the city desires to do that. It's just the level of effort and scrutiny that HCD applies to that is much more stringent. So vacant sites is the desired route to take to be able to show that capacity in a way that can be approved by the state.
That makes sense. And with our shortage being 49 units, probably not
Right.
worth all the extra effort to go through with that for such a small difference.
Right, and if someone does come in and want to build on an underutilized piece, that's like bonus,
Right,
you know, so.
right. Okay. So the same kind of methodology would apply to ADUs then? You know, we can't really count a whole lot of the ADU units because it's not vacant land, there's additional scrutiny we go through? Is that a
No,
similar-
shockingly, ADUs can be counted,
It can be, okay,
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, state is really encouraging ADUs. That's part of the reason why we included the update to the ADU ordinance and some of the standard plans and things like that that make it much easier for both property owners as well as the city to process ADU applications, so.
Okay.
Great. Any other discussions?
No.
This was a receive and file, so we have received and filed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Moving on to number 3 on the agenda, and this is related to a purchase and sale agreement by and between the City of Beaumont and Orem Capital for certain real property located on East 4th Street, east of Beaumont Avenue. Staff reports, please.
Thank you, Chairman Stevens. Tonight I'm presenting this on behalf of Kyle Warsinski, the city's Economic Development Manager. The city of Beaumont owns some property along 4th Street, east of Beaumont Avenue. Its parcel numbers are listed in there, but basically it's property adjacent to the existing Denny's building down there near Del Taco and just south of the freeway. So several months ago, the city council authorized the city manager to negotiate the sale of the city-owned properties in that area. And the municipal code requires a couple things in order for this sale to be processed through. So section 3.03.020 of the municipal code says, the duties of the purchasing officer shall include the disposition of real property in any lawful manner, provided that the sale is for the common benefit of the city's citizens. And the City Planning Commission shall prepare a report that indicates that disposition of the property conforms with the general plan. A formal declaration for that property is surplus and shall not be required. So this site consists of approximately 0.17 acres of vacant commercial land. It is zoned community commercial, and it is designated general commercial in the general plan. The property, or we've got some maps attached to the staff report for commission's benefit. The buyer is in escrow to purchase the former Denny's property, and there are plans to demolish that existing building and construct a new quick service restaurant with a drive-through. And in order to successfully develop this and meet parking and circulation requirements, the developer needs approximately 7,400 square feet of that city property. So the city council at the last meeting, I believe it was the last meeting, did authorize the sale of this property. So the presentation before you tonight confirming that the Beaumont General Plan and zoning ordinance, that the property conforms with both of those items, and the proposed use will also conform, is what's needed this evening. So staff is asking that you receive and file this report indicating the disposition of the property does conform with the general plan. And so I don't know if you want the maps up on the screen or if you guys are all able to see them, but just to confirm that planning staff has worked with economic development staff to ensure that the zoning and general plan and the proposed uses will all be conforming. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
So currently the buyer's in negotiations with the city.
Yeah, so I believe they did come to terms, and at the last meeting, council accepted or approved the sale to go through. Of course, it's, contingent on entitlements being received or being completed through the planning department and some things like that. And so planning staff has been working with the developer on working on this site.
And so once the sale or the final price is determined, that becomes public, that'll be disclosed at a
I actually
public
believe it
meeting?
was already done at the last council meeting. Okay. So it should be in the agenda, available for public viewing there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very piece of property.
It's very, yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when we look at the Denny's and the other parcels out there, we're always like, wow, it's amazing how all that is like jigsawed in together. So I think this will help facilitate a little better movement out there, at least for the new building. I know we've had some code enforcement issues with the Denny's building since it's been vacant. So, we're looking forward to a new, that one being gone and some new construction taking place there. I think it will alleviate some of the issues that our code officers are having and dealing with that area.
Nice. Any
No
comments or questions? No? No one on the line? Any requests to speak on this?
I have no written comments. Heather, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
All right, this is a receive and file, correct?
Correct.
All right, we've received and filed it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Any community development director's comments?
I have a couple.
Oh, great.
So,
All right.
since we've last met and talked, obviously our housing element update moving along quite nicely. If you haven't had a chance to fully go through the document, it's great. Like I said, I'm super excited about how this is coming along. And Jen and the team at Lisa Wise has done a great job. We will keep you updated. I think at our next meeting in September, we should have some feedback from the state at that point on where the housing element stands. If there were very many changes or anything that needed to be addressed, we can report back to you on that information so that you keep apprised. And then like Jen said, hopefully about November, we'll be to Planning Commission for your review and recommendation to the council for the housing element. And on another note, so I think at the last meeting we talked about the general plan update had won the Inland Empire Section APA award for comprehensive plan. And we got word not long ago that we also won the state award for small jurisdiction for comprehensive plan. So that's a big kudos to the city, to the commission, to council, to everybody, the city departments, everybody that worked on the document and put so much time and effort into outreach and participation. Like I know a lot of you guys did because you've all been in town for a long time watching it happen and all the work we did here at commission. So anyway, I thought I'd share that with you guys.
Yeah,
So
excellent. Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was pretty exciting. So in other departmental but community development still news, just not planning news, we have a new code enforcement officer that has joined our team. So Kelly McCarthy, who had been here for a number of years, actually retired. And so we filled the position with a gentleman named Jose Nunez, who's actually worked in another department or two in the city. I think he's been here about 17 years. He's lived and worked in town a long, long time. And we're super excited to have him on our team with Jack Huntsman, who they're currently training and, getting all those things together. So we're back up to 2 code enforcement officers instead of the one that we've had since just April. So if you need anything, send it our way. You can contact me or, refer any community members that might have questions or concerns about what's going on in town. We'll send code enforcement out there. So that's pretty exciting. Let's see. And then lastly, the Community Development Department has taken on some of the legislative affairs roles for the city. So primarily monitoring legislation and working with the lobbyists that the city has, and then working on some intergovernmental, relationship building type stuff. So anyway, you'll start to see some additional information on the reports that I send out as we have updates. So in case you're wondering why you're seeing that information, that's part of now what our department is taking on. So we'll add it to our updates. Conversely, if you have any questions about things like that you're hearing or you're seeing on the news or you're reading in the paper, whatever, about legislation or anything along those lines that affect housing or zoning or transportation or anything like that, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to get you information. If I don't have that specific information, I can reach out and get it from our lobbying team, who is in touch with various agencies and staff at both the state and federal level. So that concludes my report this evening, and we'll see you next month in September.
Yeah, I just want to announce that I may miss the next meeting. With any luck, I'll be in Rome.
Oh,
When in Rome.
right.
Nice.
I hope that you're able to make it.
Yeah.
I do too.
Carol, I didn't see you on the line so I just wanted to say hi and thank you for joining in. On the code enforcement employee, and I did not realize you were operating with only one employee. I know that's very difficult, and I just want to say you've been, just with that one person, code enforcement is something that, we don't think about until there's graffiti or a dump site or whatever. And you have been very responsive to the Sundance South community. I know with all the calls that I've placed in for mattresses, dump sites, I've at least, 4 or 5 times, and it was that one individual probably that was coming to clean it up. So very responsive, and I'm glad you're back up to 2. You probably need more, but thank you very much for your services on that, and please thank the code enforcement officers for the very responsive cleanups and me constantly calling. I mean, it's a problem, in the area,
Right.
but, you have been, Sundance looks better because of it, so thank
Thanks.
you.
I'll let Jack know. He works really hard. He's awesome. And he definitely is go all the time. I know he's glad to have Jose with us on our team as well. So I'll definitely pass that along.
You must drive a
And-
big vehicle because there's a lot of,
Well, and I'll tell you, I also should thank the other city departments because we really do all help each other out here. So Jack has been here a number of years as well, and he's built relationships with the guys in community services and with guys in public works, and, everybody kind of pitches in to help each other out. Waste management has also been a good team member when we need their help. So it does take a team effort, but yeah, as one guy, he's ripping and running all the time, so we are glad to have someone else. So I'll pass that along.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, all right. I think that's it, so we'll adjourn at 6:50.